Good evening and welcome to tonight's special City Council meeting for December 9th, 2024. Cassie, will you please take the roll?
Mayor McEachran.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Here.
Councillor Tabor.
Here.
Councillor Cook.
Here.
Councillor Denton.
Here.
Councillor Blaylock.
Present.
Councillor Bagley.
Here.
Councillor Moreau.
Here.
And Councillor Lombardi.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will start with public comment. First, we have Joan Hamblett. If you didn't sign up, Oh, wait, hold on.
Second page.
I was looking at the second page. That's why. Tom, yeah, you definitely, all right.
I was thinking you were here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, this is the way, tonight we're going from the bottom. All right. Tom, lead us off.
Hey, Mayor, Assistant Mayor, Manager, and City Councilors, thank you for letting me speak this evening. My name is Tom Kaufhold. I reside at 53 Rogers Street here in Portsmouth, and I'm an abutter to the recent Ruth Griffin project on Court Street. And I just wanted to speak to my personal experience with the Portsmouth Housing Authority. Throughout the project, they kept myself and any neighbors that wanted to be informed to what was going on when things were happening, any delays or whatnot. And the end result, I feel, fits really well into the neighborhood. It's different, it's new, it's not red brick, but I feel like it fits in very well. I know not everyone was happy with what was happening. In fact, I helped one of the residents at Feasters write a letter because he was losing his parking space. So I helped him write a letter to Portsmouth Housing Authority, and they came back and they offered him a different location that would offer parking for him. He chose to stay because he liked to walk downtown. Before the project started, there was three things I was really concerned about. One was the demolition. They had to demo a lot of the back part. And I was just concerned with the dust and the noise. And I could not tell what day they were doing demo, when they were doing it, what was happening. Whoever they hired to do the demo did an awesome job of keeping dust and noise and everything down. I was also concerned that there was going to be a lot of noise coming from this big new building and all those residents there. And so far, no problems. An occasional baby crying, which is not really noise to me. And I was also concerned that there was going to be a lot more traffic going in and out of the entrance to the buildings. And my property abuts the back of that, so all the headlights would be coming in if it was happening at night. And I haven't found any issues with that either. They really have been a great and considerate neighbor for us. One of the things this past summer, for example, there was this really high-pitched noise coming from somewhere behind my house, and everyone on our street could hear it. And so I reached out to the Housing Authority and asked them, maybe it's something in the new building, something's not working correctly or whatever. They checked both Feaster and the new building, and it was no problem. It turned out it was the courthouse. They needed to switch out some of their air conditioning units. So I do support working with them for the Sherburne property. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next up, Stephen McCarthy.
Good evening. My name is T. Stephen McCarthy. I live at 1253 South Street. Thank you for having me this evening. I speak in support of the Portsmouth Housing Authority as the chosen developer for the Sherburne School project. The PHA has a track record that's unprecedented, with hallmark projects such as the Ruth Griffin Center, like the gentleman just mentioned, the Lafayette School, Atlantic Heights, which is also a former school that the PHA developed into a 30-unit senior housing project, which you all know. And that project thrives today. What you're about to do in your vote is what I call a legacy vote. This will determine the legacy of each of you as stewards of the city, not just as counselors. We have elected you as we deeply trust each and every one of you. And you have our confidence to keep the best interest of the city as well as your constituents in mind when you cast your vote. You'll make a decision that will last generations, and it is incumbent that you choose a sure winner. The Portsmouth Housing Authority is comprised of people, from janitors to executives, all of whom are Portsmouth people, and they live here. They have a deep commitment to their jobs, and they work hard to make the PHA what it is today, which is why all the projects that the PHA have done have been a great success. Craig Welch has proven that the PHA's projects are the best in New Hampshire housing, if not all of New England. They speak for themselves. They don't need me to speak for that. The two developers that are competing here are both extremely worthy. The task at hand is to expose the city to the least amount of risk, maximize the value aesthetically, as well as to the benefit of those needing the housing. The PHA is the correct choice for many reasons. The PHA serves 1,800 plus people. They favor 25 plus local contractors contributing to the economy of this city and the nearby cities. The PHA's partnership with Great Bay Community College is one of many examples that showcases the depth and service and commitment the PHA has to its residents. They go far beyond providing a bed and a roof. Most people in the city have no idea the breadth of the added services the PHA provides. From Gather at the Portsmouth Senior Center, the PHA's resident service team. That program has improved the well-being of senior residents by addressing food insecurity, social isolation, and transportation challenges. When you vote, please consider the advantages the PHA brings to the table with local people who have committed themselves to the success, diversity, and completion of a project of this kind. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. Next up, I think this is Patricia Martin.
Martineau, I think.
Martineau.
Good evening, all. Patricia Martine, longtime resident, Portsmouth. And I was extremely happy to hear of the recommendation from the Housing Committee last week. There was lots of conversation about competition being a good thing. And in many cases, that would be a good thing. However, if a community creates a housing authority to handle the creation of housing within the city, it makes no sense to not support them and look to other nonprofits to do the exact same thing. Both are utilizing the same funding sources, and both have a mission to create affordable housing. The biggest difference is that any dollars earned in developer fees will be retained within the PHA and used to create more affordable housing in your community. Any other nonprofit will take those funds and go elsewhere to do the same thing. There is no loyalty to the residents and no loyalty to the community. Tax credit funding only requires the developer to deliver credits for approximately 15 years. The affordability requirements can be 30 years, but property owners can opt out of those requirements through a regulatory relief process. Your housing authority will maintain the affordability into perpetuity. There were other comments about whether the PHA could handle more than one project at a time. The answer to that would be a hard yes. No two projects have the same timeline. Between the length of time the local approval process takes and the tax credit funding competitive process takes, there is more than enough give to manage more than one development. I speak from experience when I say this. I ask you to support your PHA. Heaven knows there are more than enough for-profit developers making millions in this city. We need more of what PHA creates to house more of the people in this community who need a leg up. That's the one great thing about workforce housing, is that it's not a handout, it's not subsidized, and it is a leg up. The rents are moderate and meet the needs of those who work hard and serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Next up, is it Maureen Mills?
Thank you. My husband and I live at 911 Greenland Road. We're the direct abutters to the project, and we've been following this from the very start. And the speakers before, and I'm sure after, who are supporting the Portsmouth Housing Authority, are much more eloquent than I am. I only want to say that from the very start, we didn't know this was on the table until Craig Welsh knocked on our door to introduce himself and to let us know about the proposed process and what might be coming from it. And obviously, through a lot of different changes over the course of the last 2 years, things have gone a little longer maybe, but they've been really good about keeping us informed and checking in with us and making sure our needs around the project are met. And that's sort of the definition of community. And that's what we're after through this whole project, is to involve and incorporate the community, and Portsmouth Housing Authority is our community, and I think it's important to keep it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Next up is Anneke Vorsteg.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I feel like I'm echoing a lot of what's been said. So let me begin by, first of all, again, just thanking you. It is, it's almost getting to the exciting point here. And I'm delighted that there's going to be more workforce housing. I feel like we've had this dumbbell housing thing in the community with, you know, those of extreme means and those with little to nothing, and we got to tend to the middle. So we have a real balance in our community, and I know that's what you're doing. And I thank you. I've witnessed a very small portion of your many hours. The thing that I said at the last meeting with the committee that was gathered was, while I appreciate the RFP process, and it has been thorough in the scoring on that, I'm glad that we're having a conversation for the scores that aren't represented in that math. And the thing that I really would, again, remind us and ask you to consider is that the decision, as one of my neighbors said, the decision is a 30-plus year decision. I think he said a legacy decision. And I feel really confident with what's going to happen in terms of the public phase around design and making sure whether we go with one building or multiple units and all of that stuff. There's plenty of time to wrestle sustainability and those features. The thing that I would ask us to pay attention to is there will be profits and proceeds that are born out of the rent. And I would just ask as the council that you keep that money coming into Portsmouth, and that if there are profits, and there will be profits, that those come to PHA so that PHA can roll that forward into other projects, can roll it into its own staff and its own overhead and its own upkeep. It's not going to go anywhere else if we go with PHA. And as I shared the other night, you know, as a nonprofit leader looking at the budgets and the 990 of the POA staff, you're carrying tremendous overhead in terms of exorbitant salaries and staff that you would not be carrying with PHA. And I think while they both carry the title of nonprofit, it's an incredible variance in terms of salaries and where dollars go. So the real nonprofit here is PHA, and those who will profit will be the citizens of Portsmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Anneke. Next up, Eric Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name's Eric Anderson, 38 Georges Terrace. I've been involved in this right from the inception, from the very first time that this council met at Sherburne School, and I've tried to follow it, you know, in particular detail. I'm a member of the Blue Ribbon Housing Committee, and I've been very attentive to attend all the meetings and all the discussions. But now we're at the juncture this evening that you're going to have to make a decision of which developer you're going to pick. And maybe minds are already made up. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, and I just want to say, both of the proposals that you were considering are very good proposals. They are well thought out. They have structure. They have detail. They are conceptually different. Conceptually, they are different in the application where they're going to be located. And that's just a matter of your preference of what you think fits into that neighborhood and community. One of the detail that we did not, and unfortunately from a time perspective, that we did not take care of in the Blue Housing Committee was, is the school going to remain or not? You have two developers, 4 proposals. One with the school, one without the school. And they presented their proposals with or without. So that's a detail that you should attend to this evening in some type of preference. Particularly my opinion is please leave the school. It's an iconic signature piece of that neighborhood. And to take it down would be just like taking a North Church down, as far as I'm concerned, because I live out there. So at least you can ask and make a decision on the preference of keeping the Sherburne School there in some structure and using it. I tried to decipher. There was a question that was asked of PHA that you read. So it was question number 23. And PHA's attitude for the development was to build their main building and kind of mothball Sherburne School. That was, understandable, but then you go, what does mothball mean? Does it mean 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whenever money's available? Who's going to do it? Is PHA going to do? Is PHA going to do it, or the city? So, thank you for your time. You've got some decisions to make, and I hope they're the wise ones.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks for the work on the committee. Kara Ann Brunheimer? Sorry, didn't get that.
Cara Ann Rodenheiser, 79 Haven Road, close though. So I am a commissioner of Portsmouth Housing Authority, but today I'm here in my role as director of the Home for All Coalition, which is an organization of over 90 individuals and organizations in the greater Seacoast working to increase deeply affordable housing opportunities. And of the members of Home for All, I'm not sure that there is a single one of them that is also not a partner of the PHA. Whether they're serving their residents in some capacity or partnering with them in other ventures. These are relationships that are incredible in terms of successful tenancies, making sure that every resident has what they need, but also partnerships that are important for our community and make living in a PHA property home and give people a sense of belonging. And I think these are relationships that would be really hard for an outside agency to replicate. And if they did, that is a process that I think would take years. And let me tell you something else about PHA. In my role, there's a lot of different meetings that I'm at, and I really have a hard time thinking of a meeting that I wasn't at that was housing related, that a PHA staff member was not at. And that's because they truly go above and beyond for their residents. In terms of leadership, I think there's a great leader that is leading this organization. My first time meeting Craig was when I was appointed as a commissioner in 2020, and I met him at PHA, and while walking to his office, I think we were stopped about 10 times by residents in the building that were talking to him, and he took the time to stop and actively listen, but also actively engage in conversation. He asked them follow-up questions. He knew their kids' ages and names. He knew the sports teams their grandkids were a part of. And when we got to his office, he said, if I'm ever late for a meeting, this is probably why, and these are the people that I come to work every day for. They're the reason why I get out of bed, and I'm here to make their lives better. And I think that's an example that has been emulated by Craig to his staff, because his staff act the same way. They go above and beyond to make sure that residents don't just have what they need, but have what they need to be thriving members of our community. And I think this is something that truly sets PHA apart from any other developer, and I've worked with a handful in my role. You don't see many developers taking time to get to know the people that are living in their properties, certainly not after they are built. And so I think this is a level of leadership and one of the many reasons that PHA should be a clear choice. It's a quality that you're certainly not going to find in organizations that don't have a strong local presence. So thank you. And yeah, thank you.
Hey, Cara, Ally, we're gonna come back to you. Vicky Boyd?
Hi there. Thank you, Mayor, Assistant Mayor, and councilors for your time. Vicki Boyd. I live over on Pinehurst Road, have been there for nearly 8 years, but I'm really here this evening because I've worked for 20 years in Portsmouth as a hiring manager for Heinemann, one of the largest employers in downtown. And for the last 7 years, I was there as general manager. And so I'm here because I know about the housing affordability issue from an employer's perspective, and I know what a challenge it is to attract and retain talent, especially young entry-level talent into the city, where we have such a limited inventory of affordable housing. So I want to thank you for taking on this urgent issue, and I also want to congratulate you on arriving here this evening on the verge of an informed decision that will move us forward on this issue. I want to specifically urge you act on the recommendation of your Blue Ribbon Housing Committee in choosing PHA as your development and management partner on the Sherburne project. You've already heard a number of compelling reasons, but some bear, all of them bear repeating, and there are a couple that I want to emphasize personally. As you know, this is our housing authority. Our local housing authority is special. It's nationally recognized. It's an organization of excellence. Not every city has a housing authority, and not everyone has one that we can be as proud of as we are of our own. We know that they know how to engage the community in a consensus building process. We know there's a lot of that to come. PHA has proven that they are capable in this area. They know how to attract the support that's necessary to get the job done. They've done it with distinction, most recently with the award-winning Ruth Griffin Place. Most importantly, the thing that I want to emphasize this evening is the permanent accountability that PHA has to you, the mayor and city council. You select, as you know, the commissioners tasked with governing and guiding the PHA's work now, and you will forever forward into the future. There's just no substitute for that kind of accountability when you're talking about making a decision about how to be a good steward of a public asset. And then one last thing I wanted to relay to you is that I am also a Seacoast Mental Health Center board member. You know this as a nonprofit service organization that has a vital partnership with PHA. I know you have a letter on record from President and CEO Jay Couture. She expresses her unequivocal support for PHA as the partner of choice in the Sherburne project. I just want to remind you that when you choose PHA for Sherburne, you are choosing to strengthen a critical partner to dozens of nonprofits in Portsmouth. We thank you for your time.
Thank you, Vicki. Next up, Sean Muskie.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. Sean Muskie, I'm a resident of Portsmouth. I live in the neighborhood that we're talking about. I think you've all known I've been fairly against the project the whole way through. I'm a firm believer that the green space is more important, especially with the town with so little land out there. It's crazy that we're getting rid of green space. And I think it's a done deal. You guys got what you wanted. You guys are going to put the housing there. Please keep the school as it is, or don't tear the building down. Leave it there. Try to make as little impact on the neighborhood as you can. I fully suspect I know who you're voting for. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. And I think you guys are going to try and put as many units in there as you possibly can. If you put that many units in that neighborhood, it just does not fit the size, the scope. So please keep the residents in mind. Lady earlier had said that PHA had reached out to her and kept her updated, had kept her involved in the process. She's probably for the project. Those of us who are against the project, we feel like we've been left out. Nobody's reached out to us. Nobody's wanted to understand better why we were against it. So if there's a next time, be sure you engage the people who don't support the project. We have great ideas. You guys are going to get what you want. We know that. But we should at least have some sort of impact on what's happening with it. If you don't engage those that are against you, you just get whatever happens. So please, keep the school. Try to keep the impact on the neighborhood as small as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Now to Joan Hamlet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Joan Hamlet. I live at 447 Colonial Drive. And I was not intending to speak today. I thought I was signing an attendance sheet.
Oh,
but
perfect.
since I'm here, I would like to urge you again to please choose the Portsmouth Housing Authority for the contractor. We know them. They've done good work in Portsmouth, and we trust them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Jen.
Next up, Caitlin Beach.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Caitlin Beach, and I live on Melbourne Street. I was born and raised in Panaway Manor and still spend much of my time in the neighborhood as my parents and sister reside on Colonial Drive and Sherburne Road. I'm here tonight to ask the board to please consider POA, the Preservation of Affordable Housing, as the developer for the Sherburne School Affordable Housing Project. Although POA doesn't have Portsmouth in its name, it seems to have a proven track record for success and has been a trusted partner for communities in the Northeast and across the country for over 25 years. I appreciate the RFP process the city implemented, and it is important to carefully consider which developer will meet our housing needs and also honor the design requests and concerns of neighbors and taxpayers. POA scored almost 150 points higher than the PHA in the evaluation process implemented by the city. The site plan developed by POA was found to be superior to the plan developed by PHA and honored the voices of neighbors and current Portsmouth taxpayers by creating multiple smaller scale 2-story buildings and townhomes in the middle and front of the Sherburne site, while keeping 3-story buildings on the lower back end of the site to specifically match the current neighborhood scale. In contrast, PHA's plan focused on a large L-shaped box-style 4-story building with 71 units and multiple 3-story buildings adjacent to the school building. The RFP clearly stated a preference that is, quote, compatible with the character of the neighborhood and features, quote, multiple small-scale buildings rather than a large single structure. POA clearly honored this preference and also respected the voices of neighbors and taxpayers in their proposal. Lastly, I appreciate that POA's plan included renovating the current Sherburne School building specifically for senior housing and included amenities that are important to Portsmouth, such as green building design, preserving green spaces, building a playground, splash pad, and community garden, and placing these at the front of the site so all community members would feel invited and have access to these amenities. Please stand by your word to partner with and consider the voices of Sherburne School neighbors and Portsmouth taxpayers as we embark on this project. There's a lot of potential to create a community that addresses our housing needs while also keeping the project in scale with the current neighborhood. Thank you for your time and thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Caitlin. Next up, Manny Garganta.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Assistant Mayor, City Manager, Councilors. My name is Manny Garganta. I live at 471 Colonial Drive. Taking a long time to get here, a couple of years, I think. It's been a process that I've been in and out of, involved in, gone to the meetings, land use with Councilor Moreau. and some of the other ones, the city staff came up with a matrix that was presented to the people that wanted to do an RFQ. They came back, they looked at the matrix, and they ranked the matrix based on what the developers put down. PHA, POA, two fantastic companies. I try to follow those RFPs. It's going to be a tough decision. I happen to know some of the people on the PHA. I don't know anybody on POA. Just looking at the two proposals, I don't want to be in your position. I want to thank you for finally getting us to this position. Something's going to go there. I totally agree with that. I totally know that. One of the questions I have, and it still hasn't been answered, is mothballing Sherburne. Are we going to mothball it till it becomes a Times building and it falls in on itself? That's what I worry about. That is a school that's been in that community. Everybody says 40, it was the 30s. We checked with the Athenaeum. Please make the right decision. I don't want to be in your position. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manny. Next up, Kristen Kern.
Hi, I'm Kristen Kern. I live at 200 Sherburne Road. I moved into Panaway in 1976 when I was 5 and was thrilled to be able to return to the neighborhood in 2020 to raise my family. My biggest concern is the integrity of the neighborhood, and because it is not located downtown, and various multi-story buildings will be out of place in a neighborhood of single-family homes. I appreciate the thorough RFP process and would be confused if the firm that scored highest did not receive the selection. Also, since PHA has developed so many properties, it might be nice to see some diversity in design and approach and with this project. And that is why I would urge you to strongly consider POA for this project. It seems like it would be more suitable for the neighborhood. It would offer more amenities to the community, and overall, it would address the affordable housing need that you all are trying to solve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Esther Kennedy. Oh, didn't see, okay. Paige Trace, recognized the handwriting.
Good evening. Paige Trace, Portsmouth. Still. Thank you. I'm here tonight because, like everyone else, you have two firms, both eminently qualified, one known and one unknown. But the fact of the matter is, you asked your city staff to rank them, to qualify them, to prepare who received a higher grade. Now, sometimes I remember growing up and my mother would say, life isn't always fair. Now, you may choose PHA, and I'll say, okay, after this huge, long process, that falls under life isn't always fair. But the fact of the matter is, it goes deeper than this. PHA is eminently qualified and a known entity. But POAH, preservation of affordable housing to be certain, when you look at the two different scopes of projects that were submitted, one is a 4-story building that goes on forever, and the other is more human, more suitable to the dignity of a human being who needs affordable housing. It's also more suitable to the neighborhood. More green space, more emphasis on the care of what they do when they developed that property or do develop it. So I ask you, think long and hard about, do I choose the known or do I take a risk and choose something that's more attractive and more in line with the neighborhood? and the human beings that will be living there, the young families. Lots of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, that's young families. Or older people, where's the green space? Where's the humanization? And with that, I know that you all will do your task, and I know that you will choose someone that you feel is qualified, because both firms are qualified. So I wish you all good luck, but think long and hard. Thank you.
Thanks, Paige.
Thank you, Paige. Any other speakers? Come forward, state your name. We started at 6:30. People might have thought we were starting at 7, so.
Good evening, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. I'm glad you actually said that, Mayor, because there was a posting on Friday that actually showed this meeting at 7 o'clock. Kristen, that was out back, actually posted the neighborhood, and I think you are going to probably get a few people that are in here, so maybe a little delay. I'm just saying you might actually have some people that would come in from Panaway that may be a different part of a crowd. So I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. I've been in your shoes before, though. I've been in your shoes for 2 interns, for 2 chiefs of police. I've been on the council to select a city manager. And the city manager that had the highest scores when it went through all of the rigorous things, she's sitting there today almost 5 years in. That's why we have this process. So to deviate from it. Portsmouth Housing Authority, yes, it has housing that's here. Everyone talks about Griffin Place, and it's a wonderful place, but it's not what Portsmouth Housing Authority is. It was never their mandate, never their charge. It's the affordable housing. The type of housing that's in Griffin does not exist in the Margison, the Feaster, and some of the other ones. That is a lower income housing establishment. That's what it was founded upon, to be able to take care of the less fortunate to a certain extent. The Griffin Place is a new type of housing because around the country, workforce housing was something. It's a new thing. This building is exactly going to be the same. I watched the last meeting. Somebody said that the list was actually 1,500 people on a waiting list for Portsmouth Housing Authority. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, it was 700 or 800, I think it was. Ask of the people that took residency in the Griffin Place, did one person, one family come off of that list for Portsmouth Housing Authority? It didn't. It didn't, because it didn't meet the criteria of the rest of those other buildings and what Portsmouth Housing Authority was meant to do. This has become very political. So I ask you this, make it non-political. Choose the other one. From day one, you heard from this neighborhood the pushbacks that went on with this. It became political. You even backed off on it in a year that you were all looking to be reelected. It literally has everything to do with that. Take the politics out of this. Choose somebody outside. Portsmouth Housing Authority has enough on its plate right now, nothing against Craig or the organization. But what they're going to have to do is bring in more resources to handle more housing. I mean, it was even Tom Farini that said to you last week that if they get this project and it gets up and running, they're going to generate $2 million in revenue. $2 million in revenue they don't have now, that they said that they'll go and reinvest in Portsmouth Housing Authority and in the city itself. Again, this has been so political. Do the right thing for the city of Portsmouth. Do the right thing for that neighborhood. Vote for the outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Jim.
Sure, Jim, come on up.
Thank you, City Council. I'm going to repeat some comments I made at the last housing meeting, but.
Jim, do you mind just stating
Sure.
your name and the address?
Jim Smalley, 352 Kearsarge Way, Portsmouth. PHA has 25% of the rental units in the city. It's the city's largest landlord. I am concerned over making the city's largest landlord even larger. Competition's healthy for both PHA and POA, and will make both better organizations. All of you competed to be elected. It made you better politicians. Every restaurant in town competes, makes them better restaurants. Competition, if you allow the POA in, you're increasing expertise. Right now you have PHA, you can keep it at PHA, you can have PHA plus additional expertise. You can have greater engagement. You have the level from PHA, you'll have PHA plus if you bring in the competitor. You'll have better designs, better opportunities moving forward. That type of competition drives better thinking, better feedback, everything. POA scored higher than PHA in every single category on the RFP, and not by a little, but by a significant amount. Why throw that away? How much weight are we giving to someone who's local? And is it 100 points, 150? Do we just say, to heck with the others? All that matters is it's local. But if you go local, you give up the benefits that I mentioned previously. The additional capacity, the nature of competition. PHA actually didn't score significantly higher than the third place finisher. Right? But number one, POA was way above PHA. PHA has been involved in Portsmouth for decades. And you folks have done a wonderful job over the decades in assisting the truly needy in providing housing. Concerns about zoning and the impact on housing affordability have been voiced for decades as well, becoming a crisis only as housing affordability affects the middle class. PHA directly benefits from this crisis. They gain from the crisis. PHA directly benefits from the zoning that artificially restricts supply and makes housing and rentals less affordable. I'm unaware of PHA leadership ever seeking to have the restrictive zoning changed, or speaking out, or showing up at the Blue Ribbon Housing Committee. I'll be done in 10 seconds. Unless it was to advocate for itself. As PHA sat idly by, its leaders show up when dollars are on the line. PHA seeking to change the zoning may not be good politics, but it's good business. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Any other speakers? Oh, I did forget to go back.
It's okay.
to
I'm from
Allison.
Rochester. I get
I
it.
wouldn't forget.
Yeah, so I think one of the points I want to make is that I have lived and worked around Portsmouth for about 10 years, but as I said, I live in Rochester, and there's a reason. So I know a lot of the abutters here are talking about the aesthetics of the project and things like that, which is very important, but you can't live in aesthetics. And I think the most important thing that would be to me as a renter would be the monthly cost to me. And I think the greater of the two proposals is PHA, because they have that in mind, and that was what was clear to me with their RFQ. The per unit cost was higher at POA as opposed to PHA, and that gets directly translated down to the renter. So the other part I wanted to mention is how I actually did work at PHA for a couple months on the front desk, front lines. And they definitely have such a footprint and collaboration with the partners in this area. I saw the Goodwin Mobile Health Van. I saw Meals on Wheels, Crossroads House partnership, as well as, Tammy Jocelyn is their resident service coordinator, runs Operation Blessing. The opportunities they also give their tenants to become employed by them is phenomenal. That's one of the things I saw and really valued, is that they see the value not only in external staff, but in the tenants that they have. They put them in positions and give them leadership to become great, valuable members of that organization. Yes. I also worked as an occupancy specialist for Alliance Asset Management in Dover, and so I actually worked with them with housing tenants through their voucher program, and I can tell you that they're efficient, they know what they're doing, and not all housing authorities present that way, so I can personally speak to their, just that they're such a great resource for this area, and that they should definitely have this as part of their portfolio, because I think they're in the best position to really make it really make it a valuable asset to the community and to people like me that have worked here and have really put in their time in the community and deserve to really live here.
Thank you, Ally. That's Ally Burge from Rochester. And now we have Tricia LaBelle on Zoom.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tricia LaBelle, and I live at 82 Osprey Drive in Portsmouth. And I just wanted to strongly advocate in favor of Portsmouth Housing Authority. I believe that the housing needs of the community are best met when we prioritize local solutions. As far as who we can trust to carry out the important project, I think some of the reasons that Portsmouth is the clear winner is local accountability. PHA is accountable to the residents of the city. It understands the specific needs of our community, including the challenges faced by our workforce. Unlike outside organizations like POA, PHA is centered, community-centered, and its priorities. Our local authority is directly answerable to our residents. Its mission is rooted in improving our city, not maximizing profits. It's a long-term commitment for Portsmouth Housing. It's committed to long-term solutions of the properties it manages. Unlike outside developers, the local housing authority will remain dedicated to the success of the properties, the residents of Portsmouth, and continuing to find housing solutions. I think that for Portsmouth Housing Authority, this property won't just be a new city in its portfolio, but instead will allow PHA to address the future needs, the immediate needs, as well as continuing to build capacity for long-term solutions. And its proven track record. I have a history with Portsmouth Housing and affordable housing, and I'm somebody that would directly benefit from workforce housing. And our local housing authority is the best place to keep that project. So I just hope that you guys can decide to keep the control, accountability of this project within our city where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Any other speakers, to, for, against, in the room, on Zoom? Seeing none, we will move on to the stated agenda of the Sherburne property disposition. Wait a sample motion, or wait a motion to take it from the table. Councilor Bagley?
Parliamentary inquiry, I believe we postponed to a date certain.
I don't recall. I thought we postponed it to this meeting.
We postponed, yeah. Which would be this motion. So it would mean the motion is active.
Okay. So you're saying we don't need a motion?
We can discuss the motion if I'm correct.
I think it's a matter of form over substance, but it was, instead of tabled, it was moved to a date certain. So in effect, it may be still active.
Okay. Can we restate the motion then for discussion purposes?
Sure. Let's see. I move to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the Preservation of Affordable Housing, POA, for permanent below-market housing at 35 Sherburne Road, substantially aligned with the proposal number 09-25 and the response dated October 11th, 2024.
I'll second.
And I spoke to this already, but I'll just speak briefly. I want to thank everybody that came out and spoke tonight and the other nights and the members of the Housing Committee. This has been a pretty long process. It's had a lot of discussion. I think fundamentally there's two things at stake here. One is I think with either developer, we're going to end up with a good project. I personally believe the POA project is better. I like the human scale of the buildings. I like that the Sherburne School is going to be maintained. And when we originally started this process, I thought the school should go because I thought we'd get a lot more housing. Turns out that keeping the school looks like to be the way to go with the POA proposal, and there's no need to mothball it. The other thing is the process. We could have picked PHA originally, For the next project, we could just pick PHA, but for this project, we decided we wanted an RFP process. And we had we had initially 8 firms respond to it, which I thought was excellent. The city decided that 4 were qualified. And we got 4 good proposals. Obviously, some of them were better than others, but nobody mailed it in. They were all good proposals. And we should be grading it based on the project and the RFP, in my opinion. There's been some comments that, you have to account for local, or you have to account for the people that have been here, but that was not part of the scoring system. And we could have made it part of the scoring system, but we didn't. If we want people to look at Portsmouth and say, we should bid for contracts there, we should bid for work there, we should bid to do stuff there, then we should follow a fair and open and transparent process. And if we do that, we would pick one of the 2 proposals from POA. In fact, the PHA proposals, well, I don't think they're bad. The L-shaped building, the elevator-style building, I guess some people are calling it, is not my preference. And either you get rid of the school completely, or the school gets mothballed. And there's some uncertainty of how you bring that back. And what just recently occurred to me, and I wish I'd asked this question, is we were kind of told by the state and others that are experts that you kind of need around 40 units to qualify for the grant money. And if we do project phase 1 and we get 40 units, which both projects would do easily, we can get the grant money. If we mothball the Sherburne School, do we still get the grant money in the future to unmothball that, or do we have to put a second L-shaped building in to hit that 40 units? And I know that's a technical question to bring up late in the game, but I didn't think about it until a couple days ago. So that's why I'm going to support POA tonight. But I do think we have 2 good options.
Thanks, Councilor Bagley. Councilor Blaylock, and then Councilor, looks like everybody, Councilor Ditton.
Thank you, Honor. As Councilor Bagley said, this has been a long process. I do appreciate everyone that has been involved, every the speakers, a member of the Housing Committee. I appreciate all the work that's been done, and I appreciate both firms and attending all the meetings that we've had. Yes, there were several proposals, offered by the developers we're talking about tonight. I don't know if we looked at when the councilor questions went back to both developers. Both said that they could produce small individual buildings or a big elevator building. Both said that they could save the school. I don't understand why that information has gotten lost, but I think some people are getting stuck on the image and the picture, and both firms have said they could provide either style of affordable housing. So I want to make that very clear. Portsmouth Housing Authority, as a housing authority, actually has access to more tax credits and other stuff, that funding that POA does not being a housing authority from the state of New Hampshire. But given that, like I've said before, I grew up in Portsmouth. I grew up right next to Portsmouth Housing Authority property on Greenleaf Ave. Every day I would either play in my backyard, I would play over at Wamaset Apartments with all my friends that lived there. Today I coach at the high school and I coach Little League. I coach a lot of kids that live at Portsmouth Housing Authority properties, and they like it. They don't enjoy it. It's not just a home to them. It's not just a roof. It's a lot more than that. So I'll just go on and say some of the things that have been said tonight really resonated with me. PHA is our community. The PHA is award-winning. They are far beyond providing a home and a roof. We know them and trust them. Relationships that they have would be very hard to replicate. And that's both with residents and nonprofits. I think if anything, this process showed that our own housing authority matches up with the best other developers in New England. We should be very proud of that, and I think we should be honored to work with our housing authority, and I look forward to doing that. So I'll be supporting Portsmouth Housing Authority.
Councilor Blaylock, Councilor Denton.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I speak for the whole council when I say that we would like the Sherburne School to be the first affordable housing project on city property in several decades. And I think I speak for the entire council when I say that whoever is not selected tonight, we would like to see compete for the next property that's put out to bid. With that said, there was a RFP that went out and a rubric which went with that RFP. And my fear is if we don't go with the top choice by the rubric, is that we're going to be closing the door on future bids to have other people come forward and submit proposals. So there are two great proposals out there, but in this initial vote, I will be voting for POA.
Thank you, Councilor Denton. Councilor Tabor, and then Councilor Cook,
Thanks, Your Honor.
and System.
First, we probably should report the recommendation from the Housing Committee. Do you want to do that?
Yes. So the Housing Committee met on Thursday evening. Thank you all for coming for that short notice meeting. The Housing Committee voted 4-3 with 2 members absent to support PHA as a recommendation to the council. It should be noted that the 3 council members that serve on that committee did not vote. We chose to abstain. There was a lot of conversation, but yeah, that was our vote after
Sent to the council.
to recommend to the council.
Thank you both. Councilor Tabor and Councilor Cook.
Yep. We got 2 finalists with 2 recommendations from 2 different processes. One based on the detailed scoring of the projects, and one reflecting the community input. Although the Housing Committee decision was a narrow one. 12 committee of 12 without 3 counselors and 2 others. 5 of 12 didn't vote, and it's a 4-3 split. I wanted to support the winner of the first process, POA, because I think their proposal is better designed. It's all done in one phase. It's not broken into numerous phases. And most important, I think we need more than just one nonprofit developer in the mix to meet our goals. Lots of people have said we could have done all this in January, but I don't think we wanted to tackle the housing crisis with just a one-off project at Sherburne. We formed a committee to look at the zoning, to look at city and private property that can be put into play, and low-interest financing, and a housing trust fund, and parking, and all those things we're working on those. But part of what the Housing Committee did was visit 4 other city-owned properties in hopes that we can recommend them to all of us here to put into the pipeline to develop. And there's also a potential land transfer as part of the GNOT. So if we award PHA the Sherburne deal, they could be developing the Christchurch project and Sherburne with several additional parcels coming right up. And I'm concerned about the capacity to do all that. In fact, in my opinion, that would be taking on too much. Griffin Place is a great achievement, but it's the only new PHA construction that's happened in 14 years. And it was a lengthy process to get that done. And I give all the credit in the world to PHA for persevering to get that done. But POA, by contrast, in 12 months has seen construction on 5 projects with 285 units, and they've renovated many more. So they have a strong balance sheet, they have deep expertise, and a team that this is what they do. If the Housing Committee goal is 500 units, I think it makes sense to bet on more than just PHA. And if you agree with that logic, then you ask, do we use PHA for Sherburne, or do we use them for the future properties? I think POA is best for Sherburne, and PHA is best for the next opportunities. And I think the RFP scoring illuminates why. I'll just tick off a few. POA is more suited to the neighborhood. It's surrounded by 17 single-family homes and Panaway, and the housing spread out in several buildings, which I think is the right approach for a suburban project as opposed to a downtown project. Lots of people have porches and backyards, but they own houses. It's not a big deal to us who own a house, but I think it's a big difference in the living experience versus the apartment building, the L-shaped building. And wouldn't we want to show the whole city that we can integrate affordable housing into neighborhoods? POA preserves the school and builds a new neighborhood all in one phase. I think 2 phases involves risks, as we've talked about. Financing the school project, How would that happen? Would it have to be maintained? Those are all questions that concern me. You know, we had Jody Carnes, our welfare director, to the Housing Committee, and she described, well, just today or this week, she said, I had a woman, a widow, longtime resident, whose apartment rent from $2,000 to $2,600. And she's here seeking assistance. And she said, that's happening all the time. And she said, I want you to understand there's a need for senior housing that's as acute as the need for family housing. So I'm all for artist lives workspace. That's great. But I do think the POA plan to put senior housing in there and address that need is really important. I also just lastly want to talk about community engagement. POA plans 4 months to their process with 2 charrettes. PHA has a tighter process, a couple months and 1 charrette, and then straight into permitting according to their timeline. And the compressed community engagement combined with a single large building concerns me. Plus, PHA's clear belief, as they've stated, that this larger building is more efficient and better for tax credit purposes, says to me they're pretty committed to that plan. On the other hand, POA has, according to their Form 990, $78 million in cash, and they can self-fund a lot of iterative design changes that are worked out in an engagement process with the neighborhood. So I don't want to see us compress the engagement process and rush and say we have to get the tax credits right now. We've seen that movie before, and I don't want us to lose ground. So for all those reasons, as well as the leading-edge sustainability elements of POA's plans, I think we're best to deploy POA for this project and PHA for the future pipeline. And we'll put the school to work for the top priority, which is housing, enhance the entrance to the site for the neighborhood, create a well-designed and environmentally state-of-the-art affordable place to live, and it's for young families and seniors and young workers starting out. So that's why I would support the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Tabor. Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. This has been a very long process so far, and that's really concerned me. I don't know that I would have spent quite this amount of time getting to this stage where we're finally making a decision. It's been 2 years in a process already, and that is a delay in building affordable housing. So every time we choose a process where we spend even more time, we're delaying the process of having more affordable housing down the road. And so one of my biggest concerns in reviewing these proposals was timeline. You know, what is the timeline for having the housing built? And between the 2 proposals, Portsmouth Housing Authority is building the housing earlier than we get from POA. Also, Portsmouth Housing Authority's proposal, which keeps the Sherburne School in place, builds more housing on the site. And it's not just a little bit more housing, it's 28 more units of housing. So this is the largest property that we have as a city of Portsmouth to provide to any housing organization to build housing in the city. So we need to build as much housing as we can fit on this site that is reasonable for this community. And I believe that Portsmouth Housing Authority, in their 1A proposal, which keeps the Sherburne School property in place, is building 108 units. That's significantly more housing than we will be getting from the POA proposal, which is 80 units. We have a serious need for housing. Anytime we sacrifice units on a site, we're sacrificing housing for 28 different families or couples who need housing desperately in this community. I think it's also important to note, you know, I keep hearing the comments about, you know, scale and size. When I look at these proposals, we're talking about a building that sits far back on the property, away from any other individual single-family homes, also provides more green space than the POA proposal. For PHA's proposal, provides lots more green space on the site. And so that's something that I was particularly concerned about. It's important to me when I hear from the most direct abutters who live right there adjacent to the property that they prefer the PHA proposal, because it also provides them more buffer to any housing that goes in on that site. So I think that that's really critical in this decision. I do like the idea of artist live workspace on this site. As many people know, I serve on the arts committees that we've identified that is a desperate need in this community because we're losing our artists. And when we lose our artists, we lose the culture that we so value in this city. So 8 units of live workspace would really benefit our community. And the arts community, I should remind everyone, brings in $72 million to the city of Portsmouth every year. So it's an economic driver for the city. It generates jobs, 1,200 jobs within this community every year. So those individuals need places to live and places to work in our community, just like everyone else. So I'm very mindful of that issue. I think it's also important for us to, when we're talking about scale and size, to be thinking about how people live. I lived in apartments for a significant portion of my adult life until I was in my mid-30s, and I considered those apartments my neighborhood. So I'm always concerned about the way we're framing our discussion around housing. When we talk about, well, we want more of a neighborhood feel, well, an apartment building is someone's neighborhood. You know, people live there. And those neighborhoods are just as important as any other neighborhood in our community. And we're talking about a site that's not only abuts a neighborhood, but also abuts significant commercial properties that are much larger in scale. So no matter what is built there, in either proposal, it is a step down from the commercial, which is immediately adjacent, and the highway that's immediately adjacent to that site. The final thing that I was most concerned about, and this is where I asked the most questions about the proposal, was about management. As somebody who lived in apartment buildings for many, many years, I wanted to make sure that the management on site would be management that could handle any problems that arose, and that there was an appeals process if individuals were unhappy with the management decision. I was particularly concerned about POA's response in this case, because the regional management is in Dover, not necessarily here. But then the next appeal, if you're unhappy with that decision, is to a board in Boston. So that isn't the appeals process that I would like to see for residents in our community. I love that the Portsmouth Housing Authority has a local board that's appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. So there is a direct appeals process. We know these individuals, they're in our community. So if there are any challenges with your housing, you can turn directly to other community members to respond to those challenges. Or you can turn to your city council to make comments about that, and those comments get passed on. So I think that that's really critical, especially when you're talking about affordable workforce housing, having a local appeals process. So looking at all of those issues, I'm going to be supporting the Portsmouth Housing Authority's proposal tonight. I think it really meets the need for the most units possible on this site while still respecting the neighborhood by preserving green space for the neighbors.
Thank you, Councilor Cook. Councilor Murrah.
Excuse me. I've been working on workforce housing in the city for many, many years. I really appreciate the proposals brought forward by both organizations. I think no matter what is decided this evening, we will get a great development, and it doesn't matter which one. I truly have not made up my mind, and I'm still trying to, because I said this on Thursday. I'm like, I honestly, I've made myself a list. I've I feel like Santa Claus. I've gone over it so many times throughout the day and throughout my weekend. I see the benefits to both. I guess my ultimate would be to have POA's design and PHA managing it, and I think that would be a perfect scenario, and that would make everyone, I think, happy. Unfortunately, that's not what's in front of us. We have to make, I think, the decision that does give us the least amount of risk of it not happening appropriately. What is best for the entire city of Portsmouth? And as much as people wanted to make a decision tonight about the school, I think that's part of the design and the charrette and the engagement process. I don't think that we need to be making that decision right now. Amenities, all of those things, I think those are to come. It's going to be who gives us the best outcome. And I also like the idea of the artist workspace. I also like the idea of the senior housing. You see where I am. I'm truly stuck, and I'm going to have to make a decision very soon. And I have high hopes of being able to pull one out. I believe in, I guess it all comes down to who I think is going to be able to actually turn this around, not only quickly, because we want it done as soon as possible, but have the best chance of actually getting the housing tax credits with the state. I think that PHA does have an advantage in that realm, because I think that they have, and if you look at a checklist, they check more of the boxes for New Hampshire housing than probably the other organization that hasn't worked in the state as often or as much. The neighborhood feel of the design and POA, I think, is definitely probably a preferable one. And if we could get to that design, I think that would be a great one. I agree the green space is good, but I sort of think of Gosling Meadows, and I think of something like that sort of design might actually work in that sort of setting where you're near all the industrial, like Gosling Meadows is, but also some other neighborhood families. So I am truly undecided, but I see the merits of both of these, and when the vote is called, you'll all know.
Thanks, Councilor Moreau. Councilor Lombardi.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot has been said that I agree with. Councilor Cook pointed out a number of things that I've thought about in this. I think the density is important. I think that we need as much workforce housing as we can get. I think that we need artist workspace. I think that I also think that the PHA's connections to social services in Portsmouth is really an important aspect of their proposal. I think that they can provide it sooner. I think they can provide the actual property sooner. I like that there is more green space, and I will be voting for PHA.
Thank you, Councilor Lombardi. Assistant Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Much like Councilor Moreau, I'm torn because I see a lot of benefits with the relationship with the POA. I think they have an impressive catalog. I spent a lot of time going through their portfolio. I actually spent a lot of time watching meetings like this in other communities for the good and the bad. When I think about PHA, I am less about a hometown advantage. I don't think that necessarily needs to come into play when we're looking at an RFP. But what I do look through, and what I have been thinking, is when I've been looking at the two different RFPs, and I'm analyzing them against each other, and I'm looking at some of the more in-depth detail on the POA versus the PHA, and then I have to go back and think about the fact that, of course, POA is more detailed. They have an annual revenue of $148 million compared to the annual revenue of 1.6 of the PHA. So when I kind of look at them and I scale that back a little bit and try to level them on the same playing field, I find myself, when I'm looking at the rubric, changing the rubric a little bit more. That 100 and something point buffer gets a little bit smaller for me. It was mentioned earlier that to compare Ruth Griffin Place and who got to live there from a waiting list. To me, we don't get to choose. That has been a point of conversation for me about this project from day one. We do not get to choose who lives in this housing. There are housing discrimination laws that, that protect people. As we know, there are some preferences that can be put forward for housing, but we don't get to choose. And I think it's really important as a community, especially when I look at in this room and I look up here, that we're majority homeowners. But what I can guarantee is everyone in this room, and most likely people watching, have a place to live. And so first and foremost, I think about the fact that if we could, as has been mentioned today, change and shift these plans, and I think that is another note I'd like to make, is that these aren't final plans. These are proposals. We still have a land lease to get through. We still have charrettes to get through. We can propose design changes. There's a lot to get through in a community. With the community. But I think to me, it's so important to respect the neighborhoods, not just the immediate neighborhoods, but the buffer neighborhoods, to respect the fact that we are in a national, not just regional or local housing crisis, and to feel if we can optimize the amount of units. This may not be popular with certain people. I was disappointed to see the max number of units from these proposals. I was very disappointed by all four of them, that the max was around 100 and something units. I think we can be more creative. I think we need to be more creative. We have one of the largest lots that we're looking to redevelop into permanently below market rate housing. We need to do better. As Speaker Jim had said earlier, this goes beyond this. This is a bigger conversation of zoning, of what zoning will allow and where it will allow and where density works. Some people, again, may disagree. I live on Coakley. I view myself as an abutter. I walk that trail all the time. When my 13 nieces are with me, I take them to Panaway Manor, to the playground. I have friends who live there. You can see the 95 off-ramp. You can see it from my bedroom window. So I think it's important, again, that we step outside of ourselves and think about what would you like if you were in this position and you needed a home. Because that's what this is. This is homes for elderly, family, ideally artists, musicians, baristas, everyone. And so we have to think about how we can maximize impact without feeling the impact of the neighborhood. And I think that we can do that with either developer. And again, I am going to harp on this point a couple more times, that these are proposals. These are not set plans. So if during the charrettes, the community comes out and says, we don't like an L shape, what other options can you give us? There's a work in progress. If a community comes out and says, we do not like that your point of contact is not, we don't feel local enough. What are some solutions you have for that buffer area? If we feel like we're not comfortable with someone having to go to a board of directors in Boston, people are scared enough to come to a city council meeting in the city they live in. There's work to be done within that. That's just my piece. But I think that, again, we need more units, not less. We're all going to feel an impact from the South End to Panaway to Coakley to Maple Haven of new neighbors. We feel that impact every day, but there's very few circumstances where we can make sure that the impact we feel is for the greater good and the long-term benefit of our community. And I think that, for the people at home or the people in here who maybe shook your head when you heard Gosling Meadows, I think you need to reflect on why you did that and what judgments you're facing internally. I grew up in public housing. If it wasn't for public housing and public schools and public health care and public transportation, many of us in this room would not be where we are today. And so again, it's so important when we think about workforce housing and we think about median income, 80% median income for us, as defined by HUD, is one person making $66,000. For a family of two, that's $75,000. For a family of three, that's $85,000. So we're talking about working people trying to just live, and we need to maximize what we can do. And with that, I'll end how I started. I am really torn between which proposal, because I see the benefit of both. I see POA's expertise, I see the design, but I also understand that they have more staff and more money to articulate a design. And then I see PHA and local, and as we've said, a proven track record, and a proven track record of getting tax money, federal monies, to pay for these projects. So you'll know my vote because I'm always the first. And so I will chew on that while the mayor passes the gavel.
Nobody else wanted to, okay. Thank you, Assistant Mayor. I think everything that Councilor Denton said, that when he spoke for the council, he did speak, at least for me. I think there's a lot of excitement around this. When it comes to two partners, I would say that I know that there's a winner and there's a loser, but two partners of I think both won in this process, and I'll explain that a little bit. I think that from POA's standpoint, the plan henceforth is that we're going to have a lot of potential with GNOD for more city-owned land. It would be transferred for us instead of developers building that land. They would transfer it to us, and so having other options in the city. I think POA has done a remarkable job of introducing themselves to the city of Portsmouth. I think the PHA has done a also remarkable job in terms of, and I didn't really think about it in the context of budgets. I just thought of it in the context of the amount of work that has already gone in to this, to be at a point where the top two selected firms, and one is a regional, and you're our hometown team that equals from a construction financing standpoint. We're in a good position here in Portsmouth, and although I probably would not have supported an RFP, like the timelines of this worked out, so we had the time to take for this, and we were able to do so from that standpoint. And we learned a lot of this. We learned a lot about the process. On the RFP itself, there was a lot said about the RFP. So I know that it seems like I spend a lot of time doing a lot of mayor stuff, but I actually have a real job where I pay rent. You know, this is in terms of needing to work. I wish I was in a place where this could be my full-time job, but I have a job, and I respond to RFPs all day long, a lot. Whether it's speaking to the RFP, actually filling out the RFP, I do that a lot. And there's one thing that states in there that there's, scoring will be indicative but not final. And the reason why that's important is that it's not the only measure that we take in. And something that I had not thought about necessarily before the RFP, before reading the results of the RFP, was the fact that, and I think it hammered home when the former mayor, my friend Rick, had mentioned the fact that the job of the Portsmouth Housing Authority is to focus on public housing. And this is a way to support that goal. We might, and I'm sure my good friend Rick would say maybe differently about what I'm saying here, but my view of Portsmouth Housing Authority being able to deliver this project to them would give them the opportunity to invest that in other PHA properties. I'll take a note on the on Gosling Meadows. So we just had the holiday parade. Hopefully you're all there. It was 17 degrees a couple days before, but it was 34, 35 degrees. It was a great day. And nobody fell into the Islington Street construction. So super excited about that. Peter Rice was out there. I have a picture of him standing outside the dirt part of that road. But I bring that up because of Eli George. He was the Grand Marshal this year, and Eli George is the Grand Marshal for the work that he did at the B3 basketball group, and that is a group that predominantly focuses on kids from Gosling Meadows and has a clinic there and creates a bunch of community there day in and day out, specifically on Sundays. And my family and I have been lucky enough to join them on occasion, and it's fantastic. It's a really impressive group of kids, and Tiernan loves going because those are kids that all go to New Franklin, and she gets to see her friends in a different setting on their home turf. And so that's a PHA community. That's not what we're talking about here, but it's important to talk about the fact that by investing in the Portsmouth Housing Authority, we're also investing in those communities that have that opportunity to have some of the scale that POA does. I don't think that this is easy for any of us to go. And in fact, if it wasn't the tax credits, and I think Councilor Moreau, there's a lot to be said for the tax credits for PHA, but if it wasn't for the tax credits, and this was the 4% financing, I think that's where competition has an opportunity, if not an advantage. I think that we're going to need a lot more housing development partners here because of the amount and scale that we hope to be able to build towards. I don't think that is it's not a market. We're trying to build below market housing, and I understand my friend Jim says, well, it's we should have competition. Competition would be good if there wasn't the other aspects of what PHA is serving, in my view, and we can disagree on that, but the other aspects of what PHA is serving is something that was not reflected in the RFP, nor couldn't have been. Like, we could not have put in the RFP, hey, we want this money to be reinvested back into the Portsmouth Housing Authority. It's just not something that's done. So the fact that it wasn't, I think, left that off of the conversation of what investing in PHA would allow us to do. And I say that as, and it's almost when I talk, when I look at Alex Finnegan and how well he carried himself here, and how really had an answer for a lot. And I sincerely mean this, I hope that if it does not go in POA's favor, that there's a way to collaborate going forward, and there is a commitment of the council to create more property, city-owned property through the transfer of the GNOD to be able to engage in. That's my hope. But tonight, I will be supporting Portsmouth Housing Authority. I will do so for the project that I hope you will steal aspects like the splash pad for that's 100%, and creating that neighborhood feel. You get to see all of those. I hope the folks that came out speaking for POA, especially those folks that are in the neighborhood, share that information with you. I hope that if there's an opportunity to reach out to them, that you do so if you're successful in the bid tonight. So with that, I think we can take a roll call vote. Oh, Councilor Bagley. Are you? I can take the gavel back.
I can count the votes, so I'm not trying to change any minds here, but I did want to hit on a couple technical things for the next project. One, it was brought up in the discussion that, PHA is dedicated to keeping this property below market rate. Whenever we're talking about city property, we're doing what's called a 100-year lend lease, so we don't have to worry about that like we do with private property. This property, whoever develops it, is still going to continue to be owned by the city, and it would be maintained at below market rate housing as long as we negotiate that in the lend lease for this property or future properties. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is one of the things POA had in their proposal that I thought was very above board was they wanted to compensate PHA for the work they'd already done on the Sherburne school site to the tune of $100,000 or $150,000, which I didn't see in any of the other proposals. So if we do go down the path of stealing ideas from POA, I think we should consider, instead of stealing, maybe we compensate them fairly for those ideas. It is very expensive to put together proposals like this, in the order of tens of thousands of dollars. It does take a lot of time to put together proposals like this. So the other point I would make is it's not impossible in RFP to say we're going to award 50 points to the local entity, or we're going to award 75 points to the local entity. And I think we should do that. I think that's the above board way to do it, is say, yes, there is going to be a bias to the local person, and you're going to have to blow the doors off to win, but there's still a chance for you.
Councilor Bagley? Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that the Land Use Committee, which finished its work about a year ago, had identified 4 locations for housing in the city. And I hope this is not our last discussion in the next few months. I hope we're moving on to a discussion about the next site, because we need housing urgently. And so whatever is decided tonight, I hope we're moving on to that next site, and we're considering an RFP for that next site.
So we have a vote, or a motion on the table to award, I don't exactly remember it, the Housing Authority or the POA.
POA.
Do we want a roll call vote on that?
Yes.
Assistant Mayor Kelly.
No.
Counselor Tabor.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
No.
Counselor Denton.
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock.
No.
Counselor Bagley.
Yes.
Counselor Moreau.
No.
Counselor Lombardi.
No.
And Mayor McEachran.
No.
6-3.
Wait, a motion to,
Your Honor.
We need a motion.
yeah, wait a minute, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, wait a motion. All right.
I thought he was waiting the motion to adjourn. I'm like, we can't.
Okay.
Your Honor, I would move to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with the Portsmouth Housing Authority for permanently below market rate housing at 35 Sherburne Road.
Second?
Councilor Denton?
Thank you, Your Honor. As the only renter who has not also owned property that's sat up here in over a decade, I am excited to see the city council take this step.
Seems.
Councilor Bullock?
Thank you, Your Honor. And I do hope that a splash pad can be included somewhere in this. I'll just state that. But I'm very happy that all the work that's been done to get here, and I look forward to the results.
Roll call vote, please.
Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Tabor.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
Yes.
Counselor Denton.
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock.
Yes.
Counselor Bagley.
No.
Counselor Moreau.
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi.
Yes.
And Mayor McEachran.
Yes.
8-1.
Your Honor, I would make another motion. I move that we enter into a non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A3, Section 2E and L, to consider threatening litigation against the city and legal advice.
Second?
All in favor?
We need a roll call, I'm sorry.
We need a roll call. Okay.
Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Tabor.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
Yes.
Counselor Denton.
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock.
Yes.
Counselor Bagley.
Yes.
Counselor Moreau.
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi.
Yes.
And Mayor McEachran.
Yes. Good night, Portsmouth.
They hit this.